是某某平台的 IB 吗？
我常常听身边的顾客朋友说，做 IB 的都是很轻松的工作，不是去打golf，就是去和客户喝茶，就能赚到可高达5位数的收入了。
我只想说，你只看到了一部分的事实。我认识的一些 IB， 他们的平台都没有提供很多的 support 给他们的自家 IB。有时被客户问到 signal 或市场分析，他们还要去其他平台买 signal 提供给客户。
而我能够把我 IB 的业绩一直保持并持续成长，选择一个能帮助你发挥的品牌，绝对是最重要的决定。毕竟选择比努力重要。在 VC Forex Capital， 你和你的客户可以交易到的产品有外汇、贵金属如黄金原油、虚拟货币、指数和超过400个美国股票。而且公司会提供的 support 有每周至少2次的线上课程、Telegram 信号群、每日市场分析，还有6月开始，我们会有著名的市场分析师兼 YouTuber 开用，为你和你的客户提供线上直播，为你现场分析市场，现场带单。最重要的是 Forex Capital 是一家成功获得美国期货协会所颁发的 MFA 牌照，让你和你的客户可以安心的把资金投资在这里交易和建立你的 IB 团队。如果你有兴趣了解 VC Forex Capital 的 IB 优惠，近日我们会在柔佛新山有一场 Forex Capital 的线下 IB 招商会。现场我们也会提供红酒给大家，让我们一边品尝红酒，一边讨论如何把你目前的业绩推上更高峰。点击下面的链接，我们会有专人联系你，我们到时见。
All right, good evening. Cool. Okay, welcome back to the new week over here. Okay, so again, if you're new, joining us in today's live session over here, quick one. Okay, what we're gonna do is, as usual, we're gonna look into what are some of the opportunities for today. Okay, this week here as well, and we're gonna look at the market overview as well, to give you an understanding of like throughout the week what are some of the things you need to take note of, and of course in terms of opportunities that's available as well. Okay, so what I would strongly suggest you guys to do so is, of course, if let's say you have any particular questions, right, or you're looking at something and you want a second opinion, feel free to put it into the chat box over there as well, and then I'll be able to look at it and share with you my thoughts or even answer some of the questions that you guys would have. Okay, let's start off with looking at some of the events that is happening this week. Okay, so that you need to take note of if you're trading the market. This week over here, we have just today in the afternoon our RBA rate statement and cash rate. So we saw RBA actually raised rates. Okay, but of course the Aussie actually came down a bit. That might be because of the rate statement. Okay, again, it's not as hawkish and as what the market expect, and most of the time that's where the markets sell off, right? The next one that's coming is we do have the FOMC meeting minutes, right? If you're based in Malaysia, that will be on Thursday 2 a.m. I don't think that's gonna be like huge market moving, okay? Because we do have NFP and some of the important data. We quit tier 1 data coming in on Friday, both the dollar as well as the Canadian. Okay, so again, this is not new. If you're trading for some time, you know that every first Friday of the month, we're gonna have the NFP, right? Non-farm payroll plus the average hourly earnings as well as the unemployment rate. One thing to note though is at today's current context, this tree data is not as important anymore, okay? Because everyone's attention right now is on inflation and not so much on like, what is NFP and what's the unemployment rate, okay? They're still important, but they're not gonna be they're not likely gonna move the market a lot. Okay, so yeah, in a way, you can still trade the news. I know some traders actually trade NFP and sort, but I don't think it's gonna be a market moving event this time round. Okay, so I think maybe on Thursday, okay, session we'll probably talk a little bit more about how you can prep up for NFP and the Canadian, because today is still quite some time away from Friday's event. So the market can still develop, and we won't want to focus on the news aspect as of today, okay? But I just want to give you a big picture as of now, okay, to start off the week. Okay, yeah. So with that, let me bring you to S&P as a general first. I think yesterday the market is closed, right? 4th of July, okay? It's a holiday in the US, so the equities market is also not moving. The stock market is closed. Okay, but if you take a look at today's analysis over here, my view is that looking at how the price is currently developing, okay, there's a good possibility we'll see S&P maybe come down a little bit more. Okay, perhaps forming a little bit more of a double bottom back towards like 3636 zone and area before that bounce. Again, you don't want to be long term right now in terms of the equities, right? So if you're long-term investing, maybe not the best time to be buying yet. But if you're doing short-term trading like CFDs, indices, right? I think you can still participate in that. You can identify both buy and sell. Okay, so for now, I think this week, at least for the first half of the week, okay, you might want to look up for sell opportunity for the short term. Okay, short term basically looking at primary target at 6363 to form that double bottom, and then after that you want to get out and see how the market develop from here. Okay, so overall, if the S&P market is falling, okay, we are gonna transit into what we call a risk-off environment. Okay, not sure if you're aware of this relationship in the financial market as well. So we have this thing called the risk environment. Basically that means like risk on, risk off. And what is risk on, what is risk off is actually tied to sentiment. Okay, so risk on is basically where traders and investors are willing to take a higher risk for a higher return, and most of the time they tend to invest in slightly higher risk asset, right? Things like the stock market is considered a risk asset, okay, of a higher risk. Speculative assets such as crypto market is also considered higher risk. Okay, versus let's say the opposite of it is lower risk, right? Safer asset. Safer asset includes like your government bonds, includes like cash. Okay, those are actually considered more of like safe asset. Okay, so when we are in a risk on environment, riskier asset tends to perform better. When we are in a risk off environment, safer asset tends to perform better. Okay, so as equities market, if the charts are telling us high probabilities to the downside, then we are currently looking at a potential risk off environment. Okay, so during risk off environment, if you're looking at FX market specifically, okay, the dollar, the Japanese yen, as well as the Swiss franc, these three are likely going to be strong. And if you're looking at Aussie and New Zealand, then there's a good chance these two currency will be weak. Okay, so you can kind of pair this up as well by understanding the overall equities market. If you're in a risk off, you might want to pair up, and focus on maybe Aussie dollar, Aussie yen, because one strong, one weak, you can't get a very nice move in the FX market. Or you can look at maybe the New Zealand dollar and New Zealand yen. It's gonna give you a very clear sense of direction as well from the sentiment risk off perspective, right? And of course, adding on to that, we do have the commodities like gold and silver, right? So during risk-off environment, likelihood is that gold is going to be supported as well. Okay, so later we'll look into the gold chart as well. But the idea here is this week, okay, if at least for the first half of the week we expect the equities to sell off, then we can focus, our attention to some of this direction and some of this asset over here. Okay, so hopefully you guys are following so far, right? So the idea is you can of course trade the indices directly, right? Or you can actually then also focus on like gold, look for buy opportunities, or you look at Aussie yen, Kiwi yen, for Aussie dollar or Kiwi dollar, right, for opportunities to go and sell it. Okay, so I hope that helps. With that, let's take a look at the dollar index. Okay, so as we're speaking today, the dollar actually broke off the previous resistance over here. Okay, so you kind of see that there's a previous potential double bottom, but as we're speaking today, the dollar actually strengthened and broke above that 105.6. Okay, so what's next from here? Okay, from a technical perspective, this is definitely a very strong breakout. You can see the momentum is also very strong. So number one, immediate thought process over here is don't go and sell the dollar, right? Don't go against the current momentum, okay? Unless you want to lose money, right? So the current momentum is up, so you want to be riding in line with the direction of the momentum, right? So you want to be focusing on buy, but you don't want to buy at the high as well. Okay, so what's the best practice over here is to at least wait for a little bit of a pullback and then look for buy opportunity. Okay, so this one here I've actually shared with you guys before. To make profit in a trade, you need to get two things right? Direction and timing. Okay, so direction is obviously like easier to identify, right? Because if the momentum is up, as I mentioned, you want to be focusing on upside, right? So the direction is quite clear. Timing is the part where it gets a little bit more complex. Again, it depends on individual as well, how you're gonna set your stop loss and things like that. Okay. But one thing to be very clear is you don't want to be jumping in at the high, right? That's like the worst timing to get involved in it, because if the market starts to pull back, then you're gonna suffer some loss, right? So my view here is that there's a good possibility that you want to wait for a pullback first. And if it pulls back in a very corrective manner, okay, then we do have a very good opportunity to buy up the dollar, right? And this is kind of in line with what I mentioned about risk off just now, right? And if you add another layer of fundamental analysis where the Fed is hiking rate, the Fed is tightening, the Fed is hawkish, fundamentally the dollar is also strong. Okay, so there are a couple of reasons stacking up to support the case of looking for buy opportunity in terms of the dollar. Okay, technical, we have the breakout. The sentiment is in line with bullish dollar, and fundamental over here is also in line, right? So in a way, you kind of have like multiple perspective all telling you upside for the dollar is higher probability. Okay, so if I zoom out all the way to the daily chart, or even there's nothing much you can see on the daily, right? We have already cleared off some of the all-time high on the daily chart. If you go to the weekly, you can see the question now is, can the dollar really strengthen all the way to 8118? Okay, that is actually back in 2011. But you can see, okay, since recently we have broke off this resistance, there's really nothing much that is holding us back, right? You can see over here, really nothing all the way until this high. But of course, the market is never gonna go like straight up all the time, right? It's gonna go in wave, up and down, and things like that. But from a weekly chart perspective, that is where you want to see the opportunity and the potential in which the upside can present to us is huge, right? So definitely, this is something that is worth to be considered and to be monitored. Okay, so with that said, if you take a look at euro, of course that's the inverse, right? So if you don't trade the dollar directly, then you want to be focusing on the euro. They move kind of inverse in relationship, and again, as we're speaking, if we go down to the 4-hour time frame, okay, we're kind of breaking this significant support as well as of now, right? And this momentum is rather strong. Okay, so if you flip the analysis on the dollar and put it onto euro, what we're waiting for is kind of like the consolidation here, and this will give you a very good opportunity to the downside. Okay, adding on to euro from a fundamental point of view, this year moving forward, okay, you want to look for you want to pay attention to the eurozone. Okay, so you either pay attention to it from the indices point of view, which you can look at German DAX, right, kind of represent euro, or you look at the euro currency itself. Okay, now two macro trade ideas in the FX market that you want to pay attention to is one is on euro, the other is on the yen. There is a good possibility and potential that we might see another euro crisis. Okay, the last that we had was something happened in Greece, right? So kind of default. Okay, the next country in euro that is facing such a threat, okay, of a default is actually Italy. Okay, so that's from a macro point of view. Okay, so when Italy or more countries in the eurozone starts to have this risk of defaulting, it will have an impact in the euro currency as well. Okay, and of course it's going to be negatively affecting the euro. There's a good possibility that euro is going to continue falling. Okay, and if you pair up with a strong currency like dollar, then it's a very nice trend again. Okay, so this is something that I think on euro dollar, it's worth taking note as well. Okay, as a macro trade, big picture perspective, have that background information. Okay, so same thing over here. If we bring you to the weekly time frame, we can't have this level here, and seems like we are breaking as of now, as of this week. Okay? But we're still very early of this week. How the candle for the week close really depends on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But if let's say this week is able to close bearish below this entire structure, we are definitely seeing a very important level being breached. Okay, and if I zoom out again, okay, if you take a look at this chart here, same thing as the dollar. Once this level is broken, there's really nothing that's stopping the euro from going down all the way below parity. Okay, below parity means below 1. Okay, 1 is actually somewhere here. Okay, somewhere at that level, right? So it's probably going to face a little bit of a support at parity, which is 1:1, 1 euro is to $1. But again, as I mentioned, based on the macro projections, there's a good chance euro might quote unquote collapse, right? And when that happens, can the euro dollar go lower towards the previous low at 0.8640? Probably. Okay, so keep an eye on that, right? Have that in mind as well if you're looking for sell opportunity in the euro. Do consider the macro trade idea as well. Okay, so you can really write it as far as you can according to any strategy that you're using. Okay, so for me, this week on the euro dollar, what I want to wait for, as I mentioned, we want to wait for a little bit of a pullback, and if that happens, then I'll be looking for a sell trade. Okay, I think it's not gonna happen within today and tomorrow. I think by Thursday's session, when we come back, we still have that time to see if it forms a correction. If on Thursday it forms a correction, then it will be also very ideal, where we can actually combine the potential catalyst from NFP to trade the euro dollar to the downside. Okay, so let's see how it's gonna go, right? But as of now, we're gonna prep up a little bit on the euro side of things. Okay, pound dollar is also falling because of the strength in terms of the dollar. Okay, so pound dollar as of now, it hasn't really break the previous support area. Okay, it's kind of retesting that. Are we gonna see that double bottom or not? We need to give it time. Okay, so as of now, if I bring you to the higher time frame on pound dollar, we're kind of back at this zone. Okay, again, very similar. If this breaks, then the next level is really back at the low at 2020, right? So overall, the dollar is strengthening, and if you look at some of the major pairs, it's definitely very clear, okay, where it's likely heading as of now. The pound dollar to me is not a trade yet. There's no real setup at the moment. Okay, again, maybe by Thursday session when we come back, it's gonna be clearer, and then we'll look at it. Okay, Aussie dollar over here, kind of forming a little bit of this pattern, right? Which it's coming down, but it's not really coming down very strong. It can potentially turn out to be a diagonal structure that looks something like that as well. Okay, we do have a little bit of a divergence build up. Okay, not the best and obvious, but there is that little bit of a divergence building up, right? Okay, so if you're talking about or you're looking at Aussie dollar, I would suggest don't sell it yet, but instead focus on opportunity and see if you can look for a buy. And if you're gonna buy it up, this is gonna be my primary target around 7070. But of course we're not gonna buy as the market is falling, right? We want to wait for some kind of confirmation. So again, likely maybe closer towards like Thursday session when we come back in. If you see a pattern that we can buy up, take the reversal trade, then of course I'll be sharing with you guys on that. Okay, but quick one, what I want to see on the euro, on the Aussie dollar on Thursday is kind of have a crawl pattern here that looks something like that. Okay, so if by Thursday we see this, then we have a buy opportunity on the Aussie dollar targeting 7070. Okay, that's on Aussie. Of course, very similar here is the New Zealand. Okay, we kind of had that set up here as well. This looks a little bit of same pattern, right? So same thing, if you're looking to buy the Aussie, of course, then there's a good chance New Zealand dollar would follow to the upside as well. Same principle, same expectation. We want to see this on Thursday, and if we get that, we have a solid trade to the upside. Okay, so we're keeping tab on some of this major pairs, right? So let's see how it goes by Thursday. Okay. Our dollar cat is breaking out. Okay, not surprising. Again, as I mentioned, dollar is strengthening, right? And you can see over here, basically this would be the analysis for the dollar Canadian. Okay, as of now it's breaking, so if I were to readjust this a little bit, this would be the bottom right now, around 1.2820. So as long as the market is able to maintain above 1.2820, there's a good possibility we're going to see more upside, right? So from an Elliott wave perspective, this is going to be a WXY. Okay, and if I bring you to the daily time frame, okay, we can expect a little bit more upside from here, right? So if I zoom out all the way, you can see, okay, again, if this really takes off with dollar strength coming in, what we can expect is equal leg of this. This is here. Maybe I'll measure it for you, right? So if we take this, put it here, map it out here. Okay, there's a good chance we're gonna see the dollar cat reaching towards 1.3250, right? 1.3250. So if I put that at 1.3250, okay, that would be at that area. Okay, so you can see the idea is, again, zoom in a little bit. Okay, if we see a pullback, you need to be patient a little bit. Maybe by Thursday again, this will be a good buy opportunity targeting 1.3250, right? Huge upside as well. Of course, we do have a little bit of resistance here, but if again this does a little bit of a consolidation, there's a good possibility we're gonna break it. Okay, the dollar cat, same thing over here. I think we want to be patient. By Thursday session, we might get a nice setup. Okay. Now, having said all this, I'm in on dollar Swiss franc on the buy side. I think I shared with you guys this last week as well, right? So if you're actually in this trade, I've already shifted my stops to break even. If you're following onto the buy idea, you want to manage your risk, feel free to do that as well. Okay, so quick recap, right? As of why we were looking at buy on the dollar franc last week, is really because of the bottom here, right? We talk about key significant levels. The pattern that's developing, it was actually a crawl. and there's a good possibility of a reversal. So we are starting to see that happening. Of course, this move is not really that strong now, but as long as it consolidates and then it keeps going, then we're just gonna manage the trade along the way. So for me, I kind of got involved in that break at this level here. I did share with you guys like how I'm gonna get involved in that breakout, if I'm not mistaken, last week. Somewhere around 9590 area. That's where we look for the breakout. And then of course the stop was below there. Right now it's running almost close to like 1:1, right? And that's the reason why I have to shift my stops to break even. As part of my risk management, right? I just want to remove the risk out of this trade and see how far this can go. Okay, the final target for this trade here is really all the way back to its previous high at 1.0050. Okay, so you can see here previous double top. So there's a good possibility we can see the dollar franc reaching there. Okay. Again, you don't expect it to go immediately one day like that. But what we expect is it gonna go, does a bit of consolidation, keep going, does a bit of consolidation, and keep going. Okay, so let's see how the dollar franc is gonna play out for this week. But for those of you who managed to get involved in the buy on dollar franc, just manage the trade. Nothing has changed, right? The direction is still basically looking for upside. If you're not in yet, do wait for a pullback. Okay, perhaps it's gonna form here a bit, or the pullback might be a little bit higher. Wait for it to go higher, maybe pull back here. Okay, you just want to wait for this pattern, right? If you don't see this pattern, don't jump in first, right? If you miss out on that, let it go. Okay, just wait for the next opportunity and then take the next trade. All right. So those are the majors. Hopefully you guys are following through. Last one here on the majors, we have the dollar yen. Okay, dollar yen is something that I mentioned also with regards to the macro trade earlier just now, right? Mentioned that euro is one, the yen is another one. Okay, why you want to pay attention to the macro trade on yen as well is because the Bank of Japan right now is doing what we call a yield curve control policy. Okay, and to summarize and simplify that policy is basically the Bank of Japan will keep maintaining a certain bandwidth for the yield curve, and in order for them to maintain that bandwidth of that yield curve, they basically need to keep printing Japanese yen, right? And we know if there is a huge increase in supply but there's not much of a demand, then you have the imbalance equation where supply is a lot, demand is not really there. Then what happened to the price? The price of it will actually drop, right? And if not controlled, that is where we're gonna see the yen weaken significantly, right? And that's what we call hyperinflation. Okay, it happens in a couple of countries, right? One of the most popular hyperinflation that happened was in Zimbabwe. Okay, the other one that's closer to us in Malaysia is actually Indonesia, right? So Indonesia did suffer a little bit of what we know as hyperinflation as well. And that's the reason why if you take a look at the rupiah today, there's so many zero behind it, but it's not worth a lot, right? The value of rupiah is not there. Okay, can the Japanese yen in the future also suffer this? That might be the case, right? Because of this thing called the yield curve control policy. Okay. So do take note of that as well. I'm not saying that it's gonna happen for sure, but there's a good possibility it might happen in the yen, and if that happens, you want to capitalize on that as well, right? So again, the dollar right now is fundamentally strong, and if the yen really suffer the fate of hyperinflation, then what can happen is the dollar yen can really shoot up a lot. Okay, so if you look at higher time frame over here, it has already shoot up significantly. The next historical high is at 147.3. That happened back in 1998. We have already cleared off quite a bit of a significant resistance through this move that happened this year. So the question is, how far more can it go? Okay. So over here, I'm not saying to buy the dollar yen immediately. Okay, but have this again as a macro idea as you look at the yen. Okay, because if you manage to get involved in the buy, you don't want to take full profit off your buy position. You want to scale out, scale in at the same time, and have this macro idea behind to write as much as you can. Okay, so if you take a look at dollar yen right now, it's not the best time to buy yet. Okay, why? It's because we kind of had a little bit of a resistance right now. Okay, this pattern over here is looking a little bit more like a diagonal setup. Okay, so from an Elliott wave perspective here, this is what we call a 1, 2, 3, 4, and potentially this can be a wave 5 up. Okay, and this would then become maybe a bigger consolidation down before the next move up. Okay, very similar to what we see here in dollar Canadian, right? So you have this little up move and then a bigger consolidation and then the move up. Okay, so pattern is important, right? Pattern recognition. So it's not going to be 100% all the time the same, but likelihood of this happening is quite high, right? So when you start to understand this, okay, it's not the best time to buy yet. Okay, because when is actually a better price to buy if this is likely happening? You want to buy at the bottom here, right? Of course, you don't need to catch the red bottom, but wait for this to complete, then you can even buy here or here, right? So the idea is don't buy it now. Okay, let me just remove that drawing. Okay, don't buy it now. But instead, if you're interested in short term, if this were to go up a little bit more, you can actually take the sell trade from here. Okay, but again, this would likely need to wait until Thursday or Friday. Okay, so don't need to rush through. On Thursday session, we'll talk a little bit more into that. Okay, so most of this major pairs, I think you want to be a little bit patient for the week. Okay, wait until closer towards Thursday and Friday. We might get a bit clearer patterns in which we can capitalize on. Okay. Yep, so that's on the major side of things. Some of the crosses over here is presenting quite a nice opportunity as well. First up, I'll talk about the Euro Odd and the Euro New Zealand. Showing you on the daily time frame, we are at this zone, okay, where you can see previous support breakthrough, then it came back, retest, and retest again, not able to break through. Okay, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this pattern, okay, but we talked about this pattern 2 weeks back. Okay, where did this pattern appear? It actually appeared in euro dollar. Okay, let me just very quickly compare these two charts for you. Okay, again, why pattern recognition is so important, right? So if you take a look at euro dollar 2 weeks back, okay, 2 weeks back, can you see this, right? Can you see this? Let me drop it in. Right, support, breaks, go up, retest, right? Similar. Okay, of course, different time frame, right? One is on the daily, one is on the forward. But the idea here is I want to emphasize patterns recognition. The ability to recognize pattern is so powerful. Okay. The euro, of course, played out already, right? Last week we short. I think last week or last week, okay, we kind of shorted it, and then earlier last week we took profit off the euro. In terms of euro dollar, okay, based on this pattern, based on this setup, right? And then you take a look at what's happening right now in euro odd on a daily time frame. Okay, good stuff, right? So same pattern happening on different time frame, happening on different charts. But is the probability gonna play out? It's not 100%, but we know it's high chance, right? So what are you gonna do? Okay, so if you can recognize the pattern and you know that there's a good chance this would fall, which exactly that happened on the euro dollar, what are you gonna be focusing on the euro odd? Okay, I think no need to guess. Okay, you likely want to focus on the sell. Okay, and this is just one of the pattern, right? And I mean, we have been covering quite a bit of patterns here and there, but just want to visually show you, okay, it's really happening on the market. Okay, one did happen in the last 2 weeks, played out perfectly. One is developing right now, and the whole idea of this is, again, as I mentioned, when you're able to recognize the pattern, you are able to identify the high probability of where it's going to go next. When you see it again in the future, that's where you want to capitalize on that opportunity. Okay, so I hope that's clear. So if you come back to Euro Odd, I think the direction is clear. Okay, so right now, Euro Odd, we are looking for, of course, the sell side of things, right? So if you go down to the 4-hour time frame, how you're gonna capitalize on this opportunity, how you're gonna sell it. There are a couple of strategies. Okay, different traders have slightly different strategy. Some are more aggressive, some are more conservative. There's no which one is better as long as it fits into your style. But over here you can see Euro Odd. One way to look out for it being a very conservative part of trading is that you wait for it to come and retest the trend line, and then you look to break out, trade the breakout of the trend line, right? That's one way, one approach to execute a trade. The other is a little bit more aggressive. So the idea is if it does a little bit of a consolidation here, you can look to sell this, and then if it comes down here, you manage the trade. Ideally you want to see this break. Okay, so in terms of this, you can also see it as a potential kind of head and shoulder pattern forming. Okay, so many ways you can look to execute it, but the whole idea here is focus on downside, look up for sell opportunity according to your strategy. Okay, so again, when would this happen? Probably you need to give it until Thursday and Friday, but this daily chart pattern, if it plays out, where is it likely gonna go? Previous bottom. Why? Because if I bring you back to euro dollar on the 4-hour time frame, when you see this pattern, where will it likely go? Okay, so this is the pattern that we talk about, right? Okay, where will it likely go? It will gonna go back and retest the bottom. Okay, so that's the reason why we are putting our target for Euro Australia on the daily chart all the way back towards this bottom. And if you take a look at that, that's huge, right? We are trading somewhere around 1.5180, and the bottom over here is around 1.4340, right? So huge movement that you can really capitalize on. Okay, another one here to talk about is the Euro New Zealand, right? The Euro New Zealand pattern is slightly different from Euro Odd. But again, we're kind of seeing that it tested the high a couple of times, not able to break through so far. We have this move here going up, very corrective in nature. So there's a good chance we're going to see the Euro Kiwi at least come back and retest the bottom. Maybe form a pattern that looks like that and then upside, right? So something like this. So you have this move up, this move here as a corrective pattern, and then more upside. Again, why I'm looking at this? Because of patterns, right? This is another pattern that likely can happen. Okay, so when we look at this, going down to the 4-hour chart, Euro Kiwi might be nearer in terms of the potential execution, because you can see this trend line over here. Okay, we're kind of retesting it already. So what can happen over here is maybe you give it today and tomorrow. If it does a bit of consolidation, you can really consider the breakout for Euro New Zealand. Okay, and then maybe a stops, you just put it somewhere here. Okay, so this one here, I think by tomorrow, if the market develops according to what we want, we might get a trade on Euro New Zealand by tomorrow. Okay, so again, keep an eye on that. Your potential target is somewhere around 6,370. Pretty decent in terms of risk reward as well, right? Of course, depending on how you're gonna trade it, your risk reward here can be like 1:2.45 or 2.5, right? Not too bad. Okay, so that's the one. Do look out for it. Okay, another one I'm looking out is the pound Canadian. Okay, the reason for that is if you take a look at the daily, we kind of had this potential double bottom, right? It might not be a double bottom, but until proven otherwise, we're gonna expect and forecast a double bottom. And if the daily is gonna form a double bottom, then 4-hour over here, if this is gonna form a little bit of what we know as a crawl, then we have an opportunity. So what is this pattern? Again, it's not new. what is this pattern? This pattern here, okay, let me again bring you back to dollar franc, which we talked about last week. Same but different. Okay, nothing is 100% the same, but can you see that? Can you see that, right? Same thing, right? Bottom, a move that we expect over here, bottom, and then if you see this, upside. Right, so today's, I think, like today's sharing really kind of highlight the importance of pattern recognition, because you know we do have a couple of all this that is really case studies, right? That's really happening, and I can really show it to you on the spot. Okay, where one pattern played out and one is developing. Okay, and today there's two patterns here that we're looking at. Okay, and again, you don't need a lot of all these patterns, right? You just need a solid few of them, and then you just keep what we call milking it, right? The idea of milking it is every time you see something like that, you focus on it, capitalize on that. Okay, so again, this is another good example, right? You can see the similarity of it developing between the dollar franc. Okay, and right now we are expecting it to turn and also develop here on the pound Canadian. Okay, so for this here, we are likely gonna see it either developing by tomorrow or by Thursday. Okay, so within the next couple of days, if it's gonna, if it's gonna turn out as a pattern that we can trade, it's gonna happen within this 2 days, right? Wednesday and Thursday. Okay. So pound cat, do keep an eye on it as well, right? So you have the euro, kiwi, and then you have the pound cat. Okay, so far so good. To cover a little bit more on the FX side of things, kiwi cat is another one that I think you want to have it in your watch list. Not the best yet, but I think it's still worthwhile to mention. We do have this little pattern over here. Okay. We have the divergence, right? So again, this pattern, where is it happening? Okay, if you take a look back at the dollar yen, that's similar, right? In different scale, the dollar yen is more on the 4-hour chart. Okay, the kiwi cat is clearer on the daily time frame, right? So again, what is this? This can be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so again, we're talking about patterns over here. Okay, and when we see something like that with a divergence, of course, the probability of the direction we're going to focus is upside. Okay, and if you go down to the lower time frame of the 4-hour, we can see a smaller version of that as well, right? Over here. Okay, so again, it can come in various sizes. Okay, but if you are able to recognize that, right, so you can see that's the divergence of the daily. You also have one here on the 4-hour. So again, similar, same but different. So kiwi cat is definitely worth to be monitoring. One way to look out for a trade is to wait for the breakout above that level, 8030 or 8035, right, to round a little bit, including the spread. And your stop loss here to be conservative is 7945 or 7940, right? Again, adding a little bit of spread. Okay, kiwi is a little bit tricky because when the market is close to closing, okay, end of the day, your kiwi spread can be quite wide. Okay, so you also want to factor on that. Okay, so that's how you can look up for the trade on kiwi cat, right? Something like that. So that will give you about 90 pips of stops. The upside is huge, right? If you take a look at this, the first target to aim for on the daily scale will be somewhere here, which very nice confluence as well with the previous support. This is somewhere around 8345, right? Okay, so if you pull that, you can kind of see that risk reward is it's close to 1:3.5, right? So pretty decent. Okay, so that's the play on the kiwi Canadian. Okay, I think this one here, if all things go smoothly, with this nice breakout, you might get this trade by tomorrow. So kiwi cat, take note of that. Yeah. Yeah, so next up, last one on FX side of things, we have the euro franc. Okay, so where we are, okay, again, it sounds a little bit repetitive, right? But I hope you can see where the process comes in. Okay, we're back at the bottom. Okay, and then what we do is we start to focus on that and ask ourselves, how has the price developed near that level? Okay, and if you take a look at this, again, the pattern is there. It doesn't look exactly the same, but the pattern is there. Okay, can you see that, right? So what we have is we have this significant bottom, and then how the market came very corrective, right? So of course, right now we're definitely looking for upside. Okay, however, on euro franc, if you zoom in a little bit, because of today's euro move, this down move is pretty sharp. There's no reason to buy here. Okay, the setup will only come if we see a reversal, a consolidation. Then this is the pattern that we can look to buy it up. Okay, for this to develop, wait. Okay, you might get it within this week, you might not. But again, I want to highlight the opportunity here based on this. Okay, based on the daily, we have this bottom, we have this pattern. Okay, so good. Those are the FX side of things. Let's take a quick look at gold. Okay, gold over here, we are currently still within this range. Nothing much has moved since, a couple of weeks back. We have the bottom, we have the top. The market is still within this, right? And if we go down to the forward time frame, what's happening right now is that, of course, the dollar strength is pushing gold down. And looking at the momentum, there's a good possibility we're going to see this retest the bottom, which is around 1786, to retest this. And the question again is, how is it gonna develop? Okay, don't I wouldn't suggest to sell it, because from where we are right now in terms of current price to where the potential support might be, it's not attractive, right? It's just that tiny bit. You don't want to focus too much on that. Okay, so gold here, I would suggest instead give it time and see when it reaches the bottom, what is it going to develop. Okay, now if I go down to a lower time frame, maybe 1 hour. Okay, so same thing, right? We talk about pattern. This kind of pattern, again, you're able to look out for it on any time frame. So same thing, you have this bottom. Okay, if the market comes down slow and it forms this, what do you have, right? So we talked about this pattern before, right? On we were talking about it on euro franc. Over here, euro franc, we talk about it just now. We show you on dollar franc on the forward time frame. Okay, this pattern, right? Okay, so and we talk about this also on other pairs, right? So right now, gold, if on the lower time frame, like the 1 hour chart, it starts to form that pattern, then what do you have? You have a buy opportunity on gold around the bottom at 1786. Okay, so nothing fanciful, nothing overcomplicated, but it's basically patterns that repeat itself, and you maximize on that opportunity. So yeah, as there's a saying goes, right? As traders, especially on a technical analysis perspective, you can actually trade anything, right? As long as you can recognize certain patterns that tend to repeat itself over and over again in the market, you have a certain edge in the market. You just keep doing the same thing over and over again. You keep trading the pattern until it loses its effectiveness, right? But I can share with you, all this pattern has been there for many years, and it's not going to be always working out. Nothing's 100%, but there's a very high probability. Okay, good. So that's the gold analysis. Let's jump to Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin, as of now, my view and my overall bias on Bitcoin is still the same. It's a speculative asset, and during this kind of environment where inflation is high, Fed is rising rates, cryptocurrencies are not going to perform well. Okay, and if you take a look at this here right now, there's a good chance Bitcoin might come down a little bit more, retest the bottom, maybe a potential double bottom, then maybe a bigger reversal back up to the upside. Okay. If you're new to trading, I wouldn't suggest you touch crypto at all. It's volatile. It's not easy to manage. However, if you're a bit experienced, you want to put a little bit of money, have some fun in crypto market, just manage your risk along the way. Yeah. So going down to lower time frame, there's a good possibility, as I mentioned, the momentum is there, right? So it can probably come down a little bit more, retest the bottom around 18530, and then from there we might start to see that double bottom and a reversal back towards 22810. So you can play out in terms of short-term sell and then reverse your position and look for buy opportunity targeting 22810 after that. Good. Okay, so that's on the crypto side of things, right? So we kind of covered quite a bit in today's sharing over here. The major pairs, you probably need to wait until Thursday's session, then we're going to share a little bit more, wait for the market to develop. Today, I think you want to pay attention a little bit more on Euro New Zealand because you might get one set up by tomorrow. Pound Canadian here as well, you might get it maybe tomorrow or Thursday. Okay, Kiwi CAD, I think, if things goes well, by tomorrow you might get this trade. The rest of it, you need to give it some time, right? Like Euro Odd, you need to give it time. Euro Franc, you need to give it time. And of course, the major pairs, wait until Thursday. We're going to talk a little bit more details as it develops. Yeah, so good. Yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Any questions from you? Any questions you want to clarify? Don't have? All good? Okay, last chance. Any questions? No, yeah. Okay, so I don't see any questions from my end. So hopefully it's clear for today's sharing over here. And of course, it's clear in terms of some of the opportunities that you can really start looking out for. And all the best to your trading. Of course, reminder, always manage your risk along the way because we are not going to be 100% right, and we're not going to be 100% making money all the time in every trade, right? So manage your losses and ride onto your winners. Good. Okay, so that's all from me. All the best, and I'll see you guys again on Thursday. And then on Thursday session, we're going to focus more on the major pairs, prepare a little bit on potential trade with the catalyst from the NFP and as well as the Canadian labor market. Okay, so that's all from me. All the best, and I'll see you guys then. Bye bye.